Group.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. 60-foot Greta staring down at the denizens of San Francisco. We started yesterday, still taking suggestions on a building where we could have a Greta mural looking down on us in Chicago. A college campus seems like an obvious choice.
Right.
It doesn't have to be just one.
It could be at all.
Could be a Planned Parenthood clinic, mill. Yeah, that seems appropriate since they're going to save humanity by eliminating the humans.
Children.
Yeah,
don't have children. If you do get pregnant, abort it because it'll help the environment. It'll help the climate.
This from the Babylon Bee, increasingly the paper of record since parody is impossible. A new mural in downtown San Francisco of Swedish teenage climate activist Greta Thunberg has a surprise for passersby. Her eyes are equipped with high-powered lasers designed to seek and destroy carbon-emitting SUVs on the streets below. That would be cool.
Oh,
that's not true because the Babylon Bee is a parody site, but that would be pretty cool. Maybe we could equip our mural in Chicago with those laser-sighted eyes that could destroy SUVs.
She needs to go back to Sweden and go to school because she's touring California right now. And if anyone needs schooling, I think it's her.
How dare you?
Well, it's true. How dare you?
My message is that we'll be watching you.
Yeah.
People are laughing. And
buildings
she's
in
crying.
San Francisco. Bend the knee, proles.
This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here.
You should be at school.
I should be back in school.
Yeah, go back
on
to
the
school.
other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
They love their ink sock there at the UN climate conference. Real world example of what Greta is being used to promote and what her ilk are promoting, openly promoting, including this phony baloney 11,000 scientists tackled this yesterday. Not 11,000 scientists, it turns out. 11,000 random people who signed the conclusion of the scientists of a couple of scientists in favor of population control. The kind of population control that's been promoted before, fake academics like Paul Ehrlich, who's still at Stanford. Still at Stanford.
Still there.
And autocrats like Chinese communists who murdered millions of children over the 35 years of their one-child policy and continue to do so, not just with respect to Muslim minorities like the Uyghurs who they're imprisoning and forcibly sterilizing, but also you'll recall that China's one-child policy, when it was stopped in 2015, was replaced with a two-child policy. So there's still caps. And those caps are ruthlessly enforced. You want to see a good documentary?
Yeah.
On this topic? I highly recommend One Child Nation. This is a documentary about the 35 years of the one-child policy in gripping and heart-wrenching detail because the two documentarians go to China. They're Chinese origin. They go to China. They talk to the family planning officials in villages that were responsible for enforcing the communist diktats. They talk to a midwife who estimates that she sterilized or aborted 50 to 60,000 women and children. She talks about murdering babies born alive. She now, this one woman they talked to in their 80s, this midwife,
Yeah.
she now provides gynecological services, but she doesn't provide family planning. She doesn't provide abortion. She will only help individuals who have fertility issues to help them have children. And she's got
Okay.
flags of all the children that she's helped couples to have and that she's helped to deliver since she stopped doing what she was doing under the one-child policy. And everywhere you go and all the people they talk to, they're so resigned to the horror of it because what could we do? It was policy. What could we do? And this spawned trafficking in the excess girls. This is the way it's described: excess number of girls, one-child policy. The excess girls were taken from poor families,
Mm-hmm.
sold to orphanages. The government gets the cut. Orphanage turn around and work with adoption outfits to adopt Chinese children to foreign nationals. Uh, this is once China had allowed that to take place, and the costs were $10,000 to $30,000. There's actually in this documentary a couple in Utah, an American academic and his wife came over here from China. They've spent years trying to piece together, because all the stories about the origins of these children are lies, because they were abducted at the sanction of the government and sold, and then sold again. These two are trying to put together the records of all the hundreds of thousands of children taken from their homes so they can be reunited with their families, or at least know who their families are or were. It is, I mean, it's impossible to describe. Kurt Loder, by the way, formerly of MTV, you remember him.
Yeah.
He has a good review of it in Reason as well, but it's really difficult to describe. You have got to see this documentary, One Child Nation, and put it in the context of what you're hearing, not just from young Greta, who's just a front girl, little sister there, big sister, whichever you prefer, but AOC and the actual politicians, Comrade Bernie, who wants to export effectively mandatory abortion to Africa and elsewhere, the underdeveloped nations. He wants to institute what China did the world over. That's what he said at a town hall in response to a woman who asked for his support of population control. He's only too happy to provide it, excited to provide it. Watch One Child Nation and understand that this is the policy being promoted by the left. They're slow walking the same exact policy. And those who are treated the worst are the poorest. For more on young Greta, we're pleased to be joined by Jason Hill, professor of philosophy at DePaul University, author of the book We Have Overcome, an immigrant's open letter to America. And he's got another open letter, and this one's to Greta. Jason, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Dan and Amy.
So you write in your piece, against the backdrop of your activism, I'm going to address you as an adult rather than a child, because, of course, so much any criticism of Greta has been received with, how dare you pick on a child.
Yeah.
So you sort of present why we're going to need to address her as an adult, because she's being treated like an adult by policymakers and the press corps. So I guess she needs to be addressed as adult. At least her ideas and her reviews need to. And so that's what you aim to do here. The key 1 or 2 points you would love young Greta to consider.
One is go back to school, Greta, because this deference to children that we are undertaking in our culture today is very, very dangerous. I want to say to Greta that you are right. We have failed you, but not in the way that you think we have. We bequeath to you an amazing capitalist, growth-driven, technological civilization, Greta, that has given you the chance to spout your invectives and your catastrophic, alarmist, climate-driven agenda, which is really an eco-fascist, socialist-driven agenda. That's what we've bequeathed to you. But this deference to children, this deference to everything, every sort of conceptual nonsense that comes out of the mouths of children, that adults are now clapping their hands to and saying, yeah, that's so great, you're so brilliant, this is the way in which we have failed you. Instead of granting you moral leadership, we have capitulated to every single conceptual inanity that comes out of your mouth. And the second point I would like to make to her is that her descendants are likely to live to be 120 years, much longer than any of her ancestors, and that my generation that she chooses to damn is responsible for bequeathing to her through science, through technology, again, through this growth-driven capitalism that she hates, is going to bequeath to her descendants a longevity of life, a higher health standard of living that is going to be unprecedented in human history. And she should really learn the facts before she opens her mouth.
Yeah, that's true. Well, what's her end game, and when is she going to go back to Sweden and go back to school, possibly?
Uh,
What does she want?
well, I don't think this is the sad thing. I don't think there's going to be an end game. I think she's probably never going back to school because just follow the money and follow her prop. I mean, I'm not her psychologist, and I won't get into this mean-spirited, notion of analyzing her psychology. Only her and her psychologist know what's going on in her mind. But I will say that follow the money, and there's too much money involved, and there's too much. And I agree with Dan that she's just probably a pawn behind a grand global socialist movement that's being driven by a plethora of individuals who want to drive us towards not just eco-fascism globally, but more importantly, towards global socialism, to destroy world capitalism, to destroy markets, to destroy growth, take us back to the dark ages. I see her continuing, and I see her star rising if and until intellectuals, ordinary people, the common man and woman, stop again deferring to this child and wake up and put up a healthy, sound resistance, a clarion call to the nonsense, not that only she's spewing, but that these global climate alarmists are spewing and saying, wait a minute, why aren't all the scientists coming out with the same kind of hysteria? If 200 extinct species are dying every day, and notice she's named not one has she named. And many of us are voracious readers of the newspapers and of journals. Why aren't the scientists coming out with the same kind of vehemence and declaring with the same kind of impassioned desperation? If this were true, these are all shibboleths that that are being invented and shoved down her throat. So I don't think this is going to abate anytime soon. I think this issue is actually going to get worse because people are terrified of being seen as attacking a little girl. You see, they're really, really smart by putting her up, a 16-year-old girl from Sweden. Mm-hmm. Who's going to attack her? Who's going to critique her? Who's going to be seen as upsetting a strepper's child?
Yeah.
Well, someone has to take her on.
Yeah, being afraid of children is the basis of some of our best horror movies. Assess what you actually see in front of you when you're parenting young Damien. Don't just do he's just a little girl, he's just a little boy. Of course, we've seen, unfortunately, young people, even people as certainly as young as Greta, do all kinds of horrible things. But one of the things I like in your piece, and I like generally from your work, is you take these cliches that are just accepted without thought, and you attach some consequences to them, implications of them. And there's a statement you make in your piece on this open letter to Greta that I want you to expound upon. Greta, living in complete harmony with nature is the death of creativity. Living in complete harmony with nature is the death of creativity. Living in complete harmony with nature, that sounds so peaceful and tranquil and Thoreauian, Jason. Why is that the death of creativity?
Because as I explained in the piece, I want anyone to ostensibly point to any civilization that has lived in complete harmony with nature, that has achieved anything that rivals our unprecedented, magnificent technological civilization, that can build skyscrapers, that can produce the science, that can produce underground sewer systems. It's only when we stray away from the mindset of animals that have to adapt themselves to nature, and we learn as human beings to adapt nature to ourselves, which means that we have to rapaciously, in the proper sense, exploit nature to meet our needs. When there's a drought, animals die from starvation. When there's a drought, human beings build dams, When there's a heat wave, animals swelter. When there's a heat wave, man builds air conditioning units. We learn to exploit the earth, which properly belongs to us, to adapt it to our needs, and we build civilizations. When you live in complete harmony with nature, you are like a beast. You are simply adapting yourself harmoniously with the systems, the ecosystems of nature, and you're not utilizing your capabilities, your rational faculty, to utilize the resources to meet the needs of your survival. You're living a range of the moment, concrete bound existence. And if people want to say, well, what about indigenous cultures? I'm not afraid to say it. Well, what about indigenous cultures? They had land for years. They had land with oil on it for years, and they did nothing with it. And it took technologically driven, or it took individuals with a different kind of mindset, really, who properly realized that nature was something that had, and I use the word deliberately, had to be properly, in the proper sense, exploited. Because it demands that you use your capabilities, it demands that you exercise your faculties in certain ways that go against nature. Inoculate yourself against, I would like Greta to go to the Amazon jungle without inoculating herself against any of the so-called,
Right.
wonders of the jungles and see if she would last even 5 hours. She would die of all kinds of infectious diseases. That's what I mean by not living harmoniously with nature. If we lived harmoniously with nature, most of the species would have met an early death, as most of them did meet an early death before the advancement of the technological revolution and the discovery of utilizing fossil fuel.
He is Jason Hill, professor of philosophy at DePaul University, author of the book We Have Overcome that you want to pick up, and his column, Open Letter to Greta Thunberg, at frontpagemag.com, which I'll tweet out as well at Dan Proft. Jason, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And he joined us on our turnkey